Good morning, everyone. This is John Shaw, the director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Thanks so much for joining our series, Meet the Mayor. And today we're really delighted to be joined with one of the rising stars in Illinois politics, a new mayor from Bloomington, Honorable Mboka Mwilambwe. The mayor has one of the most interesting backgrounds of any mayor in Illinois. He was born in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, has lived in the Ivory Coast, Senegal, and the Republic of the Congo. Moved to the United States after leaving high school in '89, entered ISU in 1990, earned a degree in mathematics. Then he earned a graduate degree in education, and has worked at ISU for the last quarter century in important positions, including now the Office of Equal Opportunity and Access. He's been part of the City Council of Bloomington. He served for a decade, and then in 2021, just this past April, was elected mayor, was sworn in on May 1st, I believe. He and his wife Stacy have 4 children. And he speaks more languages than most of us can even count. I mean, he speaks English, French, Swahili, Lingala, and I think some Spanish as well. So we will conduct this interview in English. But it's so good to see you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, John. It really is a pleasure to join you today.
Great. Well, back in the day when we were flying, if you're sitting next to someone, on an airplane, and they say, "Oh, sir, tell me a little bit about your background." I mean, what is? I touched over just the kind of big pieces, but I know your dad worked for UNICEF. I think the youngest of 7 children. So, what is kind of the airplane pitch about your background, explaining how you got from where you began to Bloomington, Illinois?
Yes, it's been a very interesting journey, one that's been very delightful. I could consider myself lucky to have been in the position that I have been in because of some of the choices that my parents made. My dad was someone who strongly believed in public service. Prior to joining UNICEF and the UN, he was a deputy secretary of education in the Congo for 5 years and had been a teacher as well. So in 1977, he decided to join UNICEF. We moved to the Ivory Coast, where I stayed there for 6 years. And I primarily went to schools that follow the French curriculum, because as UN employees are called to move every 5 or 6 years. Therefore, my parents thought, just for the sake of consistency, we needed to follow the French curriculum because it was about the same in every country that we would be called to go to. So '83, we moved to Senegal, spent 5 years there. So pretty much my adolescence was spent in West Africa. And then after that, we went to the Republic of the Congo across the river. A fun, interesting, and useless fact: the Kinshasa and Brazzaville are the two closest capitals in the world. But it's completely useless to know that. It's not going to do anybody any good. But I thought I'd mention that. So I finished my last year of high school in the Republic of the Congo, in Brazzaville. And then because I've always been fascinated by American culture, you have to remember I grew up during the time where there were a number of cultural icons, American cultural icons that many of us really thought highly of and followed in Africa. So I decided that I want to go to the United States, to go to school, because it's just a fascinating culture. And so in '89, I went to New York, um, because I thought I needed to, I might need to perfect my English a little bit. When I got there, I realized, because I learned British English. But when I got there, I realized really the only thing that I needed to do was to practice American English and get out and about talking to people. So I watched a lot of TV, more TV than I should probably, but it really helped me get used to the American accent, pronunciation, and things like that. And then in 1990, I had a brother who was already here in Western Illinois. He went to Western Illinois University, and once and I thought, well, Illinois is a great place for me to study and better than New York City. Not good for students. So I decided to come to Illinois State University, and then met my wife. At ISU. We got married, lived in Boston for 7 to 8 months, and then decided to come back to Illinois State University because we thought this is the best place for us to prosper. And I've been here, for all these years. I've been working at ISU, like you said, a quarter century, so which makes me feel really old. um, and then joined the council in 2011. Was appointed by former Mayor Stockton. Always, because like I told you about my dad's background, always had an interest in public service, and I thought this was a great opportunity for me to serve. Been on the council for 10 years. In 2019, I became mayor pro tem, and then decided to run for mayor in 2021, and here I am.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I read someplace where I think you were talked about the cultural icons that hit you, and one of them that was really kind of powerful was Jesse Jackson. I think you had followed his 1984 presidential campaign, and that was really striking. Tell a little bit about how that campaign resonated with you.
Well, I still remember. So this was in 1984, I believe, right?
Right.
And so we were in Senegal, and I do remember, and it might even be during the course of the campaign, but I remember this vivid image of Jesse Jackson campaigning in Chicago. So skyscrapers, in the background, the Chicago skyline, but also lots of crowds. And so for us, you have to look at it from the standpoint of an outsider. And so we hear, we've learned through history books, that America was a difficult place for minorities, for African Americans, and all of a sudden to have somebody who was Black running, it just kind of it just gave us a sense of hope. And we thought, wow, it's an amazing country, where you can witness this sort of metamorphosis in the way people think politically. So that was, in through the eyes of a 13, 14-year-olds, it was something kind of amazing to watch.
Well, tell us about studying math. I mean, has that always been your natural aptitude? And then you shifted from that to graduate studies and education. Tell us about
Yeah.
that pivot.
Yeah, so I've always had a really good aptitude with math, but one of my problems, I would say, is that, as you probably realize, is that I have also an aptitude for many other things, like languages. So I always had a difficult time, picking out what exactly am I going to do, So I've always considered myself kind of a jack of all trades. And so when I came here, I thought, I will do computer science. And when I decided to attending ISU, I went to the academic advisor. Academic advisor said, well, we do have this program where you can do both. You can get a double major, math and computer science. So I went through it, and computer science was just not my thing, because throughout the process I realized, gosh, I'm such a people person. Not to sound cliche, but I love interacting with people, and this felt like I was stuck in a corner working on my computer programming and not really being able to interact with people in the way that I would like to. And so therefore I dropped computer science as the major, and kept math. And because I also did not want to spend too much time, by switching majors, I wanted to graduate still in 4 years. I decided to stick with math. And my one of the things that caused this epiphany was that in 1992, I joined the housing staff as a resident assistant. which called me to really interact with residents and do programs and policy, education, enforcement, and those kinds of things. And that's when I thought, aha, this makes me feel alive, because I am dealing with people constantly and helping them. So oftentimes, when people ask me, hey, how is the alderman thing going? How is the mayor thing going? Well, I say, well, it's just like being a resident assistant, but for many, many, many more people.
Well, tell us about your city council decade. I mean, you served for 10 years on the city council. What was it like? What issues were you primarily focused in? How do you look back on that decade period?
Yeah, well, obviously, since I'm here now, I can say it was a pretty successful one. It was really enjoyable. It was challenging. I When I started, coming from education, and you think you're really smart. Most of us think we're really smart. And then when I got there, I realized, I was like, wow, there's a whole world here that I haven't even scratched the surface. So it was a great period of learning about policies, about issues that I had never dealt with. And I think it was ultimately pretty successful. The first few years, we had some difficulties, because I call that, it's the norming phase. You learn to work with one another, get to know each other, and things like that. But I think in the end, what I do like about it is that people come from all kinds of walks of life, different perspectives, and the important thing is to be a very good listener. There were a number of council members, over those 10 years, where I would say, we might not align closely philosophically, but I learned a lot from them, because they gave me a perspective that I didn't necessarily consider. And I thought, from that standpoint, it made me a much better council member, a much better person. And I've remained in touch, with many of them.
Now, when you ran for mayor in 2021, I read that the George Floyd tragedy
Mhm.
profoundly shaped you. Talk about that if you would.
Yeah, because when it happened, I saw develop an increasing level of polarization, not only in the country but also in the community, in terms of how to deal with that. And the social unrest, that followed. I do remember going to um, a gathering with that was called on by the NAACP locally, with whom public leaders have had a great a great relationship with. Um, and so they call this large gathering to really give an opportunity for people to not only express their frustration with what happened to George Floyd, but also to kind of begin sort of a dialogue as well, with law enforcement locally, and to show that we're all in this together. And the chief of police at the time wanted to speak, and he's someone that we had worked with, and married to an African American woman, has biracial children, and he got up to the microphone and wanted to speak, but he was shouted down, and never got a chance to say anything of what he had to say. So people never really got to know what was on his heart. And I've spoken to him privately, and I know he's a really good person and wanted to do the best. I mean, incidentally, he didn't stay very long. I think he only stayed for about a year. But then so that made me think, that really what makes a community special is the ability for people to be able to talk to one another regardless of their differences, and to do it in a way that is civil. And I So that made me think, maybe I have something to bring to this particular enterprise that is the city council as mayor, and shape the community and move us in a way that we can kind of work together. Even if there are difficult issues, let's come to the table together and not go the way of what I had seen in other cities, where there are riots and people arguing and fighting with one another.
Well, Mayor, you won a difficult three-person race. I mean, it was pretty closely contested. And at the end of it, you said something that I found striking. You said, when we do something collectively, like in an election, and decide all of a sudden that this person who is very different than most and
Mhm.
wasn't born here is actually the person that we think represents our values, it transcends all these differences. That's the beauty of America.
Yes.
And I understand that your election actually was reported back home as an important news item. Tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's when I think about it, I kind of get choked up a little bit because it was an amazing, amazing kind of thing. It really gives you a sense of being valued, by people who are different than you, for everything that you hear that is negative about America. And when you see something like that happen, you say, gosh, there is some good in this country. Is it perfect? No, it's not, but there is incredible good that happens on a day-to-day basis. It just so happens that for me, it happened in a way that people can actually see, and a lot of people can see. And I think it is reaffirming. People in Congo were excited. You have to think about what that says to them. When given the conditions that they live in, to say, "Gosh, I actually can go." So I actually see myself as, I see it as the same thing. A kid who is 10 years old in Congo might be looking at that and saying, gosh, that's a place of incredible promise, and this is where I want to go. And I never set out to do that. It wasn't my goal to be this inspirational figure or whatever, but I realize what it means to people. And I think it's a beautiful thing, and I really want people to, let's focus on that. Let's try to capture that spirit. Remember that every day when you have those moments where you're feeling down and you're feeling like things are really terrible. I say, gosh, if I could do it, anybody can do it here in this city.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, let's do a couple of things here. Tell us a little bit about Bloomington,
Mhm.
and tell us about the relationship of Bloomington Normal, because most of us, I visited your community a few times, and I'm never quite sure if I'm in Bloomington or Normal. I don't know if there's a rivalry between the two or if it's just considered one sort of cohesive community. So
Yeah.
talk about Bloomington, Normal, and then the Bloomington Normal area and the challenges that your community faces.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you're not the only one. A lot of people do get confused a little bit. So that's why we're called the Twin Cities. If you were, I mean, even geographically, unless you are a local, you wouldn't know necessarily where the dividing line is between the two. And I think the truth is, because we're so close geographically, a lot of the things that we do, have an impact on one or the other. Many of the local um, corporations, who are here, I mean, we have State Farm, who employs about 14,000, or so people. We have country companies, Country Financial, I should say that's the old name. I'm dating myself here. Country Financial, about 3,000 employees or 2,000 or so. But we also have Illinois State University, which is, in Normal. And between all of those entities, and now with Rivian, Between all of those entities, I mean, things kind of ebb and flow. People live in Bloomington, but sometimes they shop in Normal, and they live in Normal, but sometimes they shop in Bloomington. So it's very fluid that way. The community itself, is getting increasingly diverse. Both of them. Other interesting fun fact, but also maybe useless, is that the mayor of Normal, Chris Coos, and myself were born on the same day. So,
Wow.
yeah, we share a birthday. So I say, how fun is that? To have the twin cities with two mayors who have the same birthday. So, but yeah, but it's a vibrant community. I've always, obviously I've been here for a long time. From the moment that I stepped off the train, I love the community. It's nice. It's neat. And as you might remember, we've been called the happiest city in North America. And I think that goes to the fact that, there's enough to do, you know there's short commutes. Everything is within 10-15 minutes, but we're also not very far from major metro areas like Chicago, Indianapolis, and St. Louis. So really, really a fun place to live. If I had to coin something, and I'm gonna to coin Bloomington and I'm gonna steal something from my university that I work with and where I'm an alum, is that Bloomington is like it's it feels like a small town, but it has large city opportunities.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And in terms of you've talked about the employers. I mean, the sort of driving engine is the financial sector with
Right.
State Farm and Country Financial, with of course education. I mean, there's both ISU and then Illinois Wesleyan and two community colleges. So is that sort of the employment kind of core of the community?
Yeah, I would say State Farm has been a long time anchor in the community just by their sheer size. This is Bloomington is their headquarters. The same for Country and also Illinois State University. But one of the things about this community, and this is where it gets a little bit blurry because you have some corporations in Bloomington, some in Normal, but it's the fact that we've always had a very diverse economy, and our economy has always been very resilient. We've had some tough times, but we always find a way to rebound. And it doesn't feel as drastic as other communities, and I think it is for that reason that we've done fairly well. We're not overexposed in one area. Obviously, State Farm is much larger than any other entity here, but we also have Rivian in Normal, who is really kicking things into high gear, and their employment has been rising really fast in the past 6 or 7 months. But we also have Bridgestone, Firestone. We have we have hospitals, two hospitals. Carl Broman, but also OSF are two that are in the area, and lots of smaller companies, but that kind of add to the vibrancy of the community.
Well, how has COVID affected both your economics and then the sort of public health, and then I guess also kind of the cultural tensions that have arisen over vaccination and so forth. So how has Bloomington weathered this pandemic?
Yeah, I would say generally we have weathered it pretty well, considering the situation that we find ourselves. And again, I think I attribute that to the strength, the diversity of our local economy. And one of the things we looked at with the staff. The staff did a presentation a while back, and actually. showed us how much we were able to accomplish uh, in this span, where COVID was at its highest. It was amazing. I mean, more than $260 million, in continued commercial investment that I thought was really fantastic. We, as a municipality, we did not experience a significant decrease in the level of service. We focused on preserving the workforce. So even though, while people were working from home, I mean, you think about it, and how intense municipal work can be, people being on Zoom, all day and trying to get things done, and if there's one thing that I will say, that people are incredibly passionate about is their trash and recycling and their brush pickup. If that doesn't get picked up, you're gonna hear about it, and the staff perform admirably well in that particular area. So I would say we've done really well. I mean, there have been some tensions in terms of but this is not necessarily having to deal with the city. We really chose a reasonable approach. We don't have a health department. The county manages that. So early on, we made the decision that we were going to follow CDC guidelines, but at the same time, also giving people an opportunity. Private businesses, everybody is an adult, and people know what they need to do. And I think that sort of a balanced approach has allowed us to avoid the sort of the contention that you find in some places. So.
Well, tell us a little bit about the structure of your city government. I know there's a mayor, there's a 8 or 9 person city council based on wards. There's a city clerk. I don't think you have a city manager. Tell us, oh, you do? Okay, didn't see that on your website. So tell us about the mechanics of how Bloomington's government works.
Sure. So we are what we call a council manager form of government. So the city council and the mayor pretty much direct policy, enact ordinances and resolutions and other regulations. And then the city manager that we hire is responsible for carrying out the day-to-day duties of city government. And he's also responsible, hence, to hire the department heads. And that's kind of how that functions. We meet about 3 times a month to make some of those decisions, and on special occasions as needed. And we have to enact budgets, annual budgets and things like that. So.
Well, we were joking a little bit beforehand. I told you that every mayor I've interviewed so far for this series has said that their job is, quote, theoretically part-time, but they said it ain't part-time. It takes a lot more time. Then that's even setting aside, trips to the grocery store where you're trying to pick up milk, and 45 minutes later you're leaving with a list of constituent requests to deal. So tell us about how you structured this job within the context of your busy job at ISU.
Yeah, so the way I do this is that I do, of course, this job takes a lot of preparation, a lot of reading and talking with different people on a number of different issues. But typically, I try to do things, early in the morning if possible, before the workday, or try to do things during over my lunch hour, like right now. And then in the evenings and on the weekends, but there are times where it's not always possible. So I do take some time off from work to be able to do that. And fortunately, I know ISU, one of ISU's values is civic engagement. It's something that they wholeheartedly believe in. So I do have that sort of flexibility. And my job itself is not one where I have to be tied to a desk, especially in these in the Zoom era, you can do things from many different locations, do it from home and things like that. So it makes it, easy. And I should also add, I do have, my wife, Stacy, is a serial enabler. So she's incredibly supportive when it comes to doing many of the things that need to be done, with the family and the kids, and both of us have been able to do that for one another. When I was less busy, when she has busier times, I show up there and in support of what it is that she's doing. So it's a great partnership we've had.
Great. Well, another theme that I've heard from mayors is Springfield, I mean, which is kind of code for state government, and frustrations about, unfunded mandates, budget imbalances, et cetera. How does Illinois state government affect your day-to-day work as mayor? Is it a helpful partner? Is it an impediment? Does it change from day to day? How is it?
Yeah, I would say the unfunded mandates, can be very difficult to deal with because, as we are required as a municipality to have a balanced budget, and so and over the past, 10 years since my time on the council, I would say one of the significant accomplishments is that we really have been able to turn the corner from a financial perspective. We've been pretty disciplined in how we've allocated money. And so when we get unfunded mandates, it makes that very, very difficult for us to do, because we have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how we make this work. But I would say, fortunately though, we work very well with our local legislators, and they've always been very, very helpful partners in helping us achieve the goals that we need to achieve. But I'm also one who tends to be very optimistic by nature. It's like, hey, if life gives you a lemon, make lemonade out of it. So I try to keep a positive perspective when it comes to that. And I think, despite all of that, I think Bloomington has been pretty successful, and I'm incredibly hopeful for the future.
Great. We have some questions that people have emailed in, Mr. Mayor, and the first one is from Georgine from Bloomington, who says, "What are your thoughts and plans for empty buildings in downtown?"
Mhm.
Explain for those of us who don't live in Bloomington what she's referring to, and
Yeah. Well, and I think part of that, stems from I guess maybe a longer history, that we've had, with some empty buildings in downtown. But my goal and the goal of staff and the rest and the council as well has been to try to fill those up. And people might not realize that we have a much lower vacancy rate than we had in the past. So in the past year, I made a reference to staff sharing some of the accomplishments, throughout COVID. Actually, we've had 12 new businesses come into the downtown, and I should say all of them owned by women, which is fantastic. But again, the goal for us is to continue to plow forward. I know there's constantly discussions with various groups, who are interested in revitalizing the downtown. We had a number of plans in place, and last year, over the last year or two, we kind of took care of some of the low hanging fruit, and we actually have an RFP out. Um, that would look at what else, for a company to come and tell us, it's an RFQ, sorry, to come and tell us what else needs to happen in the downtown to continue revitalizing it. So I'm pretty hopeful that we're going to get there, especially with the increased level of economic activity that we're seeing from all these other business partners that we have in town.
Okay. Bernie from Springfield asked that he said he's very interested in the progress of Rivian Motors.
Mhm.
Says, given the fact that former Governor Rauner repeatedly said that the old Mitsubishi plant, that no one would take it even if it was given to them. So could you give us a little bit of backstory there and then an update on that?
Yeah, so that would be a much better question from the mayor of Normal, because Rivian is in his backyard, and this is something that they've worked on significantly. So I definitely would not want to take credit, for the work that they've done. But what I can tell you is that based on what I hear, Rivian is really kicking things into high gear. Just recently, they had their first vehicle come off the line for purchase by a customer, and I do know that they're also their employment is going to I think is expected to reach about 2,500 fairly shortly. And if you think about that, that's almost, I mean, for a company that's this young, that's almost the same number of people we had way back in the day when we had Mitsubishi in town, and it is creating some growing pains, but interesting. Yet, we welcome that, but we have to figure out how we manage that locally, because, like I said, things kind of ebb and flow. Just because it's in Normal doesn't mean that it's not going to impact Bloomington.
Okay. We have a question from Heidi from Carbondale, who actually is a native of Bloomington. She was in the Bloomington high school class of 93. And she said, I'd like to ask the mayor if he plans to address affordable housing in Bloomington Normal. She says the video posted by the city regarding the Hamilton Road east-west connection emphasizes large single-family homes in proximity to State Farm. The aerial view of the community shows large single-family homes in one of State Farm's campuses. She says, will your administration be able to address the concerns of low-income residents
Mhm.
and affordable housing? So if you could discuss that.
Yeah. So this is something that I know there are folks in town, business partners who are interested in this particular area, and so we have conversations with them. We're certainly open to working with them in partnership and in trying to achieve some of those goals. Um, uh, but one thing that I would remind people is that the municipalities are not in the business of building houses, or building buildings, or residential buildings and that kind of thing. The what we can do is to try to ease some of the obstacles that are there for people to do that. So definitely the private sector is aware of that issue. I mean, I of course I couldn't say too much about that, but I know we've had folks who have tried to reach out to us to say, hey, we're thinking about this. We realize that there is a concern in town, and we're trying to do something about it. There's an opportunity here to be able to build something and work with low income tax credits and those kinds of things. But it's not 100% the responsibility of the city. We can certainly help to make things a little easier from a zoning perspective or planning, and trying to move things a little faster.
Well, what is the best and what is the most challenging part of being mayor of Bloomington?
Hmm. That's a really interesting question. Um, I think that the best part of being mayor in Bloomington, and I think any mayor can say that, is when you find a solution to a particular issue, and a resident comes and tells you, that was awesome. I really appreciate what you were able to do to me. That's all, even as an alderman, that's always been one of my favorite part, is that sort of almost like retail kind of thing. Somebody emails you and says, hey, I've got this problem over here. Can you take care of it for me? And you work with the staff to try to address the issue, and then you get an email back, or somebody who stops you in the store and say, hey, thank you, this was amazing that you guys were able to do that's the most rewarding part. The challenging part, I would say right now, is really having to deal with sometimes differences of opinion, and sometimes, some people are able to manage that well, and others are not able to manage that as well. So to find yourself as the referee of those sometimes, it can be very difficult, because you feel like you're being pulled on both sides.
Well, if someone from Southern Illinois said, "Hey, I'd love to spend an October weekend in Bloomington, Normal," what should they do? Give them an itinerary for a weekend in your community.
Okay, well, I would say first thing, restaurants, which is a local sport. Restaurants are a big thing. I mean, it seems like people love to go out to eat in Bloomington, and there are a lot of really nice, neat restaurants that people can go to. We do have quite a few franchise restaurants, but we also have some local ones. We have way back when I came here in 1990, we did not have the options that we have now. We have three Indian restaurants, even four, I would say. We have Korean, we have Japanese, Chinese, and a number of different options. We have an African store, a market, where people can buy food. Back in the day, we had to drive to Chicago to be able to do that. But in addition to that, there are also many, many other things that people can do. We have a Bloomington Center for the Performing Arts, where there's lots of really nice, neat shows, programming for kids, for the old timers like me. The village people are coming. So I'm getting ready to do the YMCA. And we also have a large arena for larger events, where we've been able to attract a lot of interesting artists. Some people don't even know that Drake, the rapper, came here when he was not as big. And we've also had Rod Stewart and a number of different people. But besides that, we have a we have a wonderful trail, wonderful park system. In the era of COVID, when people couldn't go to the gym, I mean, it was a lifeline to be able to have that. So many people were out on the trail, and that's why I've always been a proponent of, having parks and those kinds of amenities. You as much as people, people might use them a lot, but then in the time of COVID, you realize how incredibly helpful it was to have, in the community.
Did I read someplace that you helped establish a cricket field in your community?
Yes, very, very true, very true. Because I have a lot of friends in the Indian community, and they came to me and petitioned me and said, we don't have a good place for us to be able to play cricket. So I work with the parks department for them to install something in one of the local parks, and they've been pretty happy with that. Of course, it's not a huge area, but I think it just kind of shows our willingness to listen, openness to diverse points of view. So that's been good.
Well, let me ask you finally about how you obviously are busy at ISU, busy as mayor. You and your wife have 4 children, I think, of pretty wide range of ages. Tell us about how you like to relax and enjoy yourself and decompress.
Well, eating restaurants that really helps me decompress. I love good food, and one of the things that I had mentioned in the campaign is the ability to get people together, and spend time together and eat with one another. I think it's a wonderful thing. Uh, but I also my son plays travel soccer, so I spend a lot of time with him. I go to as many of the games that I can, and his practice. I've rarely missed a practice, with him. So that's relaxing. I love soccer. It's my favorite sport. So I watch that on TV sometimes with my son when I can, but also watching other world events, like when they're really big, like Super Bowl and World Cup and NBA finals and that kind of thing. But also traveling. I love spending time with my family, and they will probably, especially my kids, will probably deny that, but we actually enjoy traveling together, even though. And we'll talk about some of the things that we do, but we took a trip out to Florida, 17 hours in the car, arguing over where to eat, what movie to watch in the car, and that kind of thing. It didn't feel like it was fun at the time. I threatened to leave them back in Florida. But and when we think about it after a while, it's like, oh, that was kind of funny. We had a good time. So we love travel, we love being with one another. So that's how we spend time, as a family. I don't feel
Well,
good when I'm not around them, when they're not around.
I was going to say, in your swearing in ceremony, you gave a very, very touching tribute to your children and also to your wife. Tell us a little bit about Stacy, what she does, and how you met, and how she helps you be serve as mayor of Bloomington.
Yeah, so Stacey and I met in graduate school. Well, we knew of each other before, but we got to know better in graduate school, actually, in a statistics class.
How romantic.
Yes, it was very romantic. Anybody who tells you that math is not romantic is not, don't believe them. It was very romantic, and so that's how we kind of got to know each other. We also worked in the housing department together. We were both graduate assistants. So right now she serves as the director of housing. Very, very big responsibility, a large budget, responsible for 6,000 students on campus. But she is incredibly energetic. Sometimes she has so much energy she makes me tired. Just watching her. And this is really how she supports me, and before I got on council, I always, supported her with many other different things that she was doing. We're each other's best friends, and council, she'll call me during the day. Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And that kind of thing. So, it just an incredible person. And like I said before, she married me when I didn't have a job. She said, I think you're the guy, let's go. It doesn't matter. Everything else is going to work out. And I think it's awesome. I love it to death.
Great. Well, Mr. Mayor, this has been really a delightful conversation. We love to learn about your community and your background. And when things open up a bit, we'd love to have you come down to Carbondale, look at the SIU campus.
Yes.
We'll get you a hat for SIU that you can wear to complement your ISU one. But actually, more seriously, love to have you meet with students and just what a remarkable story you have, and just explain how the journey you've taken and the contributions you're making to public service. We'd love to have you down here.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Great, thank you. And thanks to all of you for watching another edition of our series, Meet the Mayor. We'll have a video of this conversation on YouTube on Monday. Please show it to family and friends. And thanks for continuing to support the Institute and keep the memory of Paul Simon alive and well. Thank you so much.